Alright guys, what's up? Apparently the live stream works, so I'm going to start this thing again. And this time, I'm going to go all the way. This is the live creation of a challenge lock. I have a lot of questions about this pin lathe and what it is and how I made it and stuff like that. And I'm not going to take it all apart, but basically this is just a cordless drill that I've butchered, and use a cordless drill because it's actually like one sealed unit, the motor and everything, and the chuck. Whereas if you use a regular corded drill, usually the body of the drill is the stator, the outside, the coils and the windings are all in there, and you can't really get it apart. But with the cordless ones, you can. And then I just have a power supply hanging off the side here, plugged into the wall. It was a 12 volt drill, and I have a 15 volt power supply. So it's a little overpowered, but that's fine. It works pretty good. It doesn't bog down at all. This is just wooden boxes that I've built it on. And it was actually two boxes. This is one. And then the bottom part of another has a lid with a couple hinges on the back. Just so I can store all my crap in here. And it has a button to turn it on and off and all that crap. So let me get all the tools that I use out of here, and we'll get into making a challenge lock. Alright, so I'm going to be using this slag Mortise cylinder here, and I'll find my tools. I'll quickly get this back piece off. And it usually takes me, upward of like an hour to make a challenge lock. So I don't know how long this video is going to be, or whoever's going to watch it. But I know some people like longer videos, and, well, hey, don't watch it if you don't want to waste your time. But there won't be any fast forwarding or anything done in this, because this is a live recording. So, if I hurt myself or swear or whatever, I don't know, I swear in my videos anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But just be forewarned, this is a live recording, and I'm going to make this entire lock, so it's going to take a little while. I am just going to take the Mortise apart. And we'll get all the pins laid out on a pinning tray, and I'll go over basically how I look at a lock and how I go about making a challenge lock. So I'm just going to use these, let's make sure I'm in frame here. Just going to use one of these crappy rubber mats that I used to use before I got that awesome pinning tray from winning the contest from Potty 314. And I'm just going to dump these out because it don't matter. Alright, so we have our body stripped. The key pins, we're going to pay attention to the order because it's already bitted up to this key. That's going to be our challenge lock key. I just take a good pre-cut, and my prerequisites are that every pin has to be picked. I don't want any at the shear line. And then another thing I do is I'll take my drivers and I'll pay attention to how low these low cuts are, because you don't want your driver to fall right down into your key pin chamber. And these all look pretty good. The two lowest ones will accept a standard side driver. So those are my prerequisites, really. And if it is too low for a standard size driver, it's not a big deal. You just make a longer one out of usually out of key pins. So anyway, let's get these out in order. Pin 1, 2, 3. And I might turn the radio on or something like that. Just it's going to get loud when I start making pins here, guys. So, if it gets a little unbearable, feel free to turn your sound off or down or whatever you got to do. So there we go. Everything's good. I do have, these are my drivers. So I do have a few pin-in-pin outers already made. So I'll probably grab those. a few of those. Some of the better looking ones. There's 1, 2, we'll do 3 pinion pins in this lock. So those are the 3 colors I'm going to be using. And I will, for the insides of the pins, I usually use longer key pins. So these are all my key pins. So I'll just find ones that are long enough to use as inners. And there should be a bunch in here, so that one looks long enough. That one looks long enough. And that one's a really long one, so I'm going to need a super long inner for that one. And that should do. Alright. So, basically what I'm going to do is I paid attention to the binding order of this lock before when I picked it, but I totally forgot about it now, but that's alright. Normally I would pick a locker right before I make the challenge lock, and I would know the exact binding order of everything, but it doesn't really matter. The difficulty of this lock is going to be sheer complexity of the pins, and they're not always easy to open and not always hard to open. But anyway, these are pin and pin shafts that I've already drilled the holes in. I don't know how well this camera picks up the stream, but there's actually a hole in that pin, and I'm going to show you how I do that. I'll put another one in here and we'll get a pin and pin collar happening. So I just chuck them up in the vise there, torque it down, pull out drill bit. These are 1/16 of drill bit, and I just turn it on and try to hold it as center as I can. And as you're pushing the drill bit into the pin, if it starts wobbling, you gotta start again. And sometimes you have to actually file the pin face flat again. But here we go, guys. So I actually started the center pretty good. It wasn't wobbling or anything. And then I'll take a pair of pliers just to hold this drill bit nice and solid. And push it in the rest of the way. So that's how I do it. As you can see, it's fairly well centered. There we go. And just to clean it up, I'll grab a flat file. This big guy here. I'll trim up both ends just to make sure it's good and flat. And then we have a nice collar for a pin and pin. From here, I would start doing craziness to the collar itself. So this one, might as well use it. I'll put it in the vise here, and I'm going to give it some, we'll make it a spool. So I usually start my spools with 2 serrations with this micro or mini hacksaw blade. And I'll make a serration, evenly spaced serrations, then I'll use the file to go in there and take the middle out. So let's do that now. So I've made 2 evenly spaced serrations, and now I'll take the middle portion out with this file. It's got a nice square edge. I'll use that. Alright, if you saw, I was kind of moving it back and forth there. That's just to make sure that the spool is even. And then I'll just trim it up with this piece of, this is like 600 grit sandpaper. And that's just to take any burrs off and make sure that it doesn't get hung up in the chamber. Always a good idea to do with challenge lock pins. So then we have a spooled outer. I don't know how well you could see that. If I'll focus. Kind of. Yeah, I can't manually focus with this streaming program, guys. Sorry, but that is a spool outer. So that'll be one driver. And then we'll take another one. These are all pre-made already, so I'm just going to take this one. I'm going to serrate it. So I'm just going to put a bunch of serrations in there. And with serrations, I just try to make them as evenly spaced as possible. I will use a bit thinner of a coping saw blade for this one to get nice, thinner, tighter serrations. I'm not sure if you can see this one, but we do have tight serrations there. I didn't clean the top up. You can just stick it back in there and clean the top up. If you guys don't have a pin lathe or don't want to make one, you can just use a Dremel or a hand drill. Just put it up in a vise. So I'm just going to get these burned out quickly, guys. I'm going to do the last pin and pin here. We're going to make this one, I just picked a lock from Trekmaster that had a cool pin and pin in it, so I'm going to try to copy it here. So that is the 3 collars I'm going to use. Just going to clean up the other end of this. And now I'm going to make the insides of those pin and pins. So just like to line up the lengths of the pins here and make sure I get proper lengths. I'm going to use this one for the first one there, the one that I just made, the Trekmaster style inner spool. And basically what I do is I just make serrations all the way along here and then file it down after, because the more you can take out with the saw, the better, because the saw is quicker. Here we go, guys. Alright, now I'm just going to use the file. Sometimes the pin does come out if you push down too hard, so I try not to push down too hard, but it happens. If it does, you just stop, put it back in, tighten it down, keep going. Stop and check. Looks about right, and it is perfect. All right, so I'm there. I'm just going to clean this pin up a bit so you bring it out a touch more. And you just take the smaller file and you bring it flat to this the edge to make sure you get a good square pin out of it. And then clean it up with the sandpaper. We're done. We'll take a look at all these pins once it's actually done here, guys, but this is a pin-and-pin drunken spool kind of deal. I don't know if you can see it. This camera's kind of not good when I can't play with the focus manually, but anyway, as you can see, the top portion, the collar, will act as a spool, and this bottom portion can drop down whenever it feels like it, so that will be pretty fun. I might reduce this bottom part just a little bit and put a key pin on, or a T-pin on it, just for shits and giggles. Basically, the more you can do to a pin, the harder it is to pick it. So, basically, I just like to go crazy with my pins and make not any set type of pin. I just kind of whatever strikes me at the time. So I'm just going to put a serration on the end of this collar. You can see my drill moving around a little bit there. I gotta tighten it down again, but it's not that big of a deal right now. Anyway, this pin is done. Like I said, we'll take a look at them after, but let's work on where I'm going to place these pins. I always want them on the shorter pins because that's where it's going to have the most action. So put this one there, and that one there. So let's work on driver number 2. And we're just going to give it a couple of good serrations here. Kind of like a barrel pin. We'll put one on either end just to make it all look pretty. side. That's him, 2 serrations, barrel style. And let's go for number 3. I'm going to make a wedding cake out of number 3. You guys know that. That's the progressively staggered T-pin. So to do these, I basically just start at the very front, and I use the corner of my file here. I'll just use one of these corners, probably that corner right there. And I'll take it down, not all the way yet, but I'll make the first step, and then I'll move on to the second, and then I'll do the third. So here we go. Alright, that's the first step. Let's go to the second. Now the third. Alright, clean it up. Now we have a nice multi-staged wooden cake. This thing does not like to focus. Hopefully I can get to focus at the end when I show all the pins off, guys, but believe me, that is a wedding cake. Man. Fighting with the camera. Gotta love it. So anyway, that is a wedding cake. You'll have to take my word for it. Now we need another inner portion for this spooled pin and pin collar. So I need to make the inner portion. I'll take another key pin and we'll file down a bunch of it. And this one I'm going to leave enough so it's actually a T-pin after. So we'll do the same. We'll cut a bunch of serrations into it, nice and deep, and then we'll take the rest off with a file. Alright, now I'm going to use the file, get the rest of this down. Out again. It does happen. But just put it back in, clamp her back down, go back at it. It's looking pretty close. Let's check it out. Yep, she's there. Leaves a nice little piece sticking out for the T-pin. Now we're just going to clean it up a bit. Make sure the seat is nice and square. Round this. If you're going to have a T-pin, it's a good idea to round it up a bit. Otherwise the lock will stick when you put the key in. If you round it just a tiny bit, it makes it a lot smoother. So let's do that now. We'll clean it up. And might as well put a serration on the end of this thing too. She's done. We got a beautiful looking T-pin, pin and pin spool with a serration on the top. Yeah, it's actually focusing this time, right on. Gives me hopes for when I actually show all the pins off. And for the drivers, I don't do anything crazy, or sorry, the key pins. I don't really do much crazy stuff other than, I might do a pin and pin for a key pin, but normally don't. I normally just leave them like serrated and maybe a T-pin, key pin kind of deal, or a deep spool or something. So they usually go quicker. So that was a pin and pin. We're going to do one. Let's do another wedding cake because they are fun. They're in a lock. You have to pick them like 2 or 3 times. And they change the binding order of the lock. And you got a good chance of dropping them when you're setting pins. So let's make another one of them. Go multi-stepped pin and pin, or sorry, wedding cake pin. And this last driver is the serrated collar that we made earlier. I'm just going to make the outer portion of it. I'm going to put another serration on this back half that I didn't get in there the first time around. This will be is a little bit longer. So I might have to end up trimming that collar a bit. So I think this is one of the deepest key pins I have. But we'll give it a shot here, guys. Just turn this thing down, same way. I'll put a bunch of serrations in it and then file them all out until I got a nice long T-pin. Too hard, trying to go quick. The best thing is when you're taking a lot of meat off is just to let the file do its work. There's such a thing as a high-speed file, and these aren't them. So just take your time. Very easy to get carried away. Almost there. One or two more times falling out and it'll be done. All right. Be close. Oh, it's close. It goes in about a quarter way, which means we're really close. That's there. I'm just going to square it up, and I think I'm going to have to trim down the collar a bit because it isn't long enough to leave a T-pin, which I want. Actually, if I make it upside down and I reduce the diameter, no, it's almost a T-pin anyway, so I'm just going to square this end up. That'll give me a bit more, and then I'll probably just file the edges of the collar down the rest of the way and have a T-pin. So there we go. put a couple serrations in the shaft just to make it look better, I guess. We'll hit it with the sandpaper quickly, and then we'll flip it over, give it a serration. Go. And I just have to take these down a tiny bit, which makes the serrations, the edges, a little bit sharper if you're going to thread the core or counter mill it, which is good for catching on the threading or counter milling. So we'll just tear it down just a little bit. See if that's enough. If not, I'll do the other side. I would like a little bit deeper, so I will do the other side. It's close though. It's very close. As you can see, some of these pins actually take a little bit of time to create. And if you don't like doing this kind of thing, pin and pins is not where it's at. If you like doing this kind of thing, pin and pins are great. They look awesome, but they do take a lot of work. So this is what we got. Let's see if a focus will work on me this time. Well, it did for a sec there. We will get this on the board after, and then you'll get a better look at what's going on here. But we have the T-pin inner with a serration on the end, and then the collar, which is very serrated down the entire collar. There we go. Actually working pretty good right now. There we go. So that's our two-part pin. And we'll try to get a close-up here once all the pins are done. All I have left are the key pins, and most of them are going to be serrated. I guess I'll probably do one pin and pin, which will probably be number 2, I guess. We'll try to pin and pin him. But, well, yeah, I guess we will. Might as well. We'll do that now. So I'll make him the inner. The key pin will be the inner, and the collar will sit on the outer. Just got to square it up, and I'm going to have to trim the collar down because the key pin, actual height of the key pin really matters in a lock. Alright, square it off, and then we'll resize the collar, put a couple serrations in it, and call this one back. Popped out on me, but I was done anyway. I'm just going to dress the shaft a little bit more, sand it, and then call it done. And these pin and pins, the smoother you make the inside, the better they slide up and down on each other, which is what you want. You want the interaction between the two. Alright, so as I could see, it's about 1 millimeter. I got to trim this thing down. If I trim it down too far, it's not that big of a deal. It'll just end up being a key pin, T-pin. But I'll try to get it flush. Doesn't take much because it is like a hollow tube. So I can actually see the other side through the chuck. It's not there yet. Oh, that's pretty close. I'm just going to check it. That's pretty much dead on. Yeah, we are there. Alright, now I'm going to give it a serration and call it done. Nice deep serration too. Hopefully get caught up there. Now we'll give it one on the other side. Cannot hurt. Alright. Now we got a nice pin and pin key pin. Ready to mess anybody up. And this thing will focus, which of course it won't. Yeah, there you go. You can see it's flush on the top. Our pin and pin, the inside doesn't stick out any more than the outside. It comes nice and flush. And that is key when you actually go to put it in the lock. If it's stuck up any further, then the key wouldn't operate the lock. So it's pretty important. I almost never serrate or do anything to pin 1, the key pin number 1, because you could see it from the outside of the lock, and well, it's a dead giveaway. So I don't even bother. I just leave that one standard. Number 3, this pin is actually a wedding cake, so I can't do any T-pin. If there's a T-pin on the driver, you don't want to do any T-pin to the key pin because they will just bind up on each other. And you might not even get the lock open with the key. So this one, I'm going to make like a bomb style pin. And to do that, I just file on an angle with the smaller file. I'll just file on an angle to make it. I put the top of the pin, the part that hits the shear line, in the chuck, so I can't touch that. And I just don't take any of this off. And you can pretty much shape the rest of the pin all you want. bomb. I'm just going to turn it around. I'm going to give it a serration on the end here and clean it up as well. Crank it down. Find my blade. That's a good look at pin. Alright. And again, we're going to look at all these after here, guys. I got 3 more pins to do. And I'm not going to do anything crazy with these. We already got a pin and pin. So I'm probably going to do a couple more serrations and a spool. I'll probably make number 5 a spool. And the other 2 will be serrated. So let's do the spool first. And I just start by making a couple serrations, and I take the inside out with the regular file. Pin a few times doing this, but it does happen. No real way around it. Try this guy. He's actually a new file. He might be a little sharper. Oh, it doesn't have any edges on it. Nice. That doesn't help. Time it should be done. Then I'll just clean it up and call it a day. Do the 2 serrated pins and we're done. Just clean it up now. look is spooled key pin, and 2 more serrated pins. And then we're going to work on some core modifications, and that's it. Nice. And then sharp spool or restorations on this one. So we are done for the pins, guys. I'm going to give you a nice close-up of these pins that we made and how they're going to work in the lock. Hopefully the camera will agree with us. I'm going to grab some pointing tweezers here. Alright. We just need a focus, and there we go. So, number one, we'll pay attention to the drivers first, because this is where all the play of the lock usually comes from. Come on. I wish this thing had manual focus, but it doesn't. Sorry, guys. So, number one is a pin and pin with the inner portion falling down into the keyway, and the upper portion staying up in the Bible. It ends up as a T-pin, but as you can see, acts as a spool. Will act as a spool in the lock. And will actually come apart in the shear line, which is kind of what you want. Drop down in there. And then underneath it's a standard pin. And 2, we got the barrel serrated with a pin and pin key pin serrated on the outside collar. And I'll probably pick this thing open on video after, not live, just so I can actually focus in and show you guys the pins and everything. A wedding cake in 3 with a bomb style, serrated bomb style pin as a key pin underneath it. Another pin and pin, spooled pin and pin with a serrated on top, ends up as a T-pin. Oops. In 4. With a serrated pin underneath him. Another wedding cake with a nice spooled key pin underneath him. Another pin and pin, very serrated on the top of the insert as well as the collar. Very serrated, nice and sharp at the bottom. Ending as a T-pin as well with a serrated pin. So that's what we got for pins in this lock. And now I'm just going to pay attention to what I'm going to do to the core. Because we do have some nice sharp pins here and a couple of spools and stuff like that. Number 3 is that pin and pin spool, so I'll probably counter mill number 4. I will probably counter mill number 4. I'll probably not do anything to 1. Probably thread 2. So thread 2, counter mill 4, and thread 6. So 2 and 6 are going to be threaded. And for that, I just use my handy tap set here. This is a number 632, so that's a number 6 with 32 threads per inch. And I usually like to go nice and slow with this, and you go in a little bit, back out, in and back out. So going to be 2 and 6 are threaded. So you start it, you want to make sure that you're square here. You're square in both X and Y. So you want it to be centered there, and you want it to be centered there. And then you just crank her down. And I like to go like in a rotation, out half, in a rotation, out half, in a rotation, out half. That's just to get rid of some of the shavings and stuff, let it fall out. Because if it packs up in there, then you don't get such a clean cut. So that's 2, and we'll do 6. Make sure she's square, she is. Alright. I pretty much run it right down to the bottom until it don't go anymore. And as you can see, it kind of lifts up the edges of these key chambers here. You get a little bit of deflection on the very top. And to solve that, I just grab the flat file and just run it over a couple times. You're not really trying to take much metal off, you're just trying to take the peaks off. And then once I get the key and the pins in it, I will get a piece of sandpaper and do a little trick to it. But that pretty much takes the peaks off, and you can check by putting it in the cylinder and just making sure it turns, and it does. So that is good. And now for counter milling. We're going to counter mill chamber number 4. And for that I have what's called a sacrifice pin. And that is a pin that's about the right size, that leaves you, it might be a little bit too tall. Let's try this one. I got a couple sacrifice pins here. Different cores are different. Yeah, that's about right. So what you want is whatever bit you're using. I usually use a Dremel, but I just got this cool tool from Steel Pinnings and Big Willie the Locksmith from their contest. And it's an engraver, and it has this little diamond ball on the end of it, and that's for engraving stuff. So you can actually put your initials in the core or something like that. It doesn't matter there, it's not going to hurt anything. So what you want, though, is you want your sacrifice pin to be at the right level so that when you put this ball in there, even this one might be a little too shallow. So I'll try that other one that I thought was too tall. And you basically just search around until you find one that's just right. Because you don't want to enlarge the chamber. What you want is you want the key pin to take up the right amount of space as to leave the center of this ball right where you want your counter milling. This one looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit shorter than him. And these sacrifice pins, you can reuse them. You just flatten it on the put it in the pin lathe there and flatten it. A little bit shallower still. We're getting there. Alright, that's perfect. So if you can see, the ball disappears and your ball, the top of your ball is pretty much flush with the shear line, maybe just a tad below it. And that's going to ensure that you don't actually make the chamber any wider, that you're just carving out the inside there. So let's do that really quick. This thing bogs down too, so it's going to take a little bit. So like I was saying, this takes me about an hour to make a challenge lock. And we're sitting just over an hour right now, hour and 3 minutes or something like that. And usually I'll have the setup time for the pins and stuff like that too. The key pins, working out the bitting, cutting the keys sometimes, but this time I didn't have to. Alright, as you can see, we got some good counter milling there on 4. And that should be enough to grab any kind of spool or serration. And we got threading in 2 and 6. So now all that's left is putting this thing together, guys. Working out the springs, which are also an integral part of the lock. These key pins, sometimes in threaded chambers, they're a little bit of a beast to get working properly, like this one. You want to make sure that they actually work properly. So you usually have to run the key in and out a bunch of times just to make sure everything's going to work. As you can see, it fits in there a little too snug. But you run the key in and out a bunch of times, and it solves that problem. Basically all it does is, pin 1's good, don't need to worry with him. It just takes the edges off those serrations, and so you're sure that the pin is actually going to get pushed down by the spring from the driver. Otherwise, if it doesn't, then it's a useless pin. It just stays at the shear line. Essentially, you want it to fall down on its own. That's the best case scenario, but even if it only takes a tiny bit of pressure to push it down, like this one's already 10 times better. You know, whatever spring pressure you're going to use should be able to push it down, and you should be able to put the key in without fighting. But ultimately, you want it to fall down on its own, so you just in and out a bunch of times until it's actually good. And this one's good enough because the pressure it takes to push it down is less than the spring is going to have on it. The spring is going to have more pressure than that, so that's good. And 6 is going to be the other one that might be a little hard to get in there, so we'll do that now. You can see it's crunchy trying to put them in. And 2's good now. We put it in and out a bunch of times. You just got to do the same with 6. Make sure it goes in, push him back down. Make sure he goes in. It's already better. And 2's already starting to fall down. And we're good. Alright. So our serrated chambers are good. They seat properly. It doesn't take too much effort to push those pins down there. We'll just repopulate the rest of these pins. The counter milling chamber is never an issue because you, when you thread a chamber, it actually, the very sharp portions of the threading come out instead of taking metal away. You are taking metal away, but they actually, the very blades actually come out and into the chamber, and that's why it hangs up like that. But as you can see, all in and working now. Everything falls down, everything's good. And now all we have to do is work out springs, and we are done. We'll put the thing together and make sure it operates. So for springs, I like to pay attention to where the pins are in the plug with no key in. Which ones are high, which ones are low. Number 5 is kind of like our overset trap, so you want him to be the shorter pin with not a lot of pressure to him. So probably like this guy right there will be 5. And then depending on what the pin looks like, if it has a lot of action to the pin, you want a stronger spring, so they got to fight every inch of the way. And just variation in spring makes for a bastard of a lock sometimes. So mix it up, different types of springs, different strengths, weak ones, strong ones, all that kind of stuff. So I'm getting a good mixture of pins here. That one's strong. We'll put it right there with our spool. Put this guy there. And one more steel spring. Oh, this guy's a nice looking pin. Or spring, sorry. And him. There we go. So we got our variation. We've got a couple of strong springs where we have a lot of action on our drivers. So anything with a lot of action, pin and pins and stuff like that, I like to put a stronger spring in. If you were going to thread the Bible, you would have to pull this cap back. There's various different ways to do it. The best way I always do it is I take a piece of wiper insert and I stick it down there and I just hammer it out and that thing comes out and you can slide it in after. But I don't like threading the Bible because, especially on something like this slag, the tolerances are nice and high, and anytime you do anything like threading or countermilling, you're actually removing metal and you're making the tolerances a little worse. So for the plug, it's not so bad because it's actually, giving us a little bit of action, catching pins and stuff like that. But for the chamber, I mean, you want some of that good tight tolerances. So I'm not going to bother. I do sometimes. I have a few locks out there with threading up in the top, but not many of them. So now basically we're just going to put this thing together, guys, and see how it works. And then I'm going to pick it on a regular video after. So after this stream is over, I will start recording and edit it and all that stuff and get it up hopefully by the end of the night. And that way we can take a good closer look at the springs. Don't like these tweezers. There we go. Those other tweezers are very sharp and very stiff. So it's actually easy to drop pins and springs and fling them across the room and all that stuff. I like to keep it simple, keep it easy. Alright. So, take our plug follower, slide them in there. We'll start at the back, we'll start at pin 4, which is a pin and pin, T-pin. Grab them by the T-pin portion. Ooh, almost drop it. Well, I did drop it, but almost dropped it on the ground. Alright. It's the German side of me. I like working with the small little things, I guess. Intricate. Alright, there we go. Got him in. Let's go for number 5, which is our wedding cake. Let's go for 6, which is another pin and pin serrated, ending in a T-pin. And this is where you run into some problems. This spring is actually too big, so it does not compress enough to actually let the pin go all the way in. So I have these other ones that are not as big that I've left out. These actually came out of the lock. Come back here. And if it still doesn't work, then I just trim one down. It's not that big of a deal. Trimming down springs happens a lot. Well, we are good. All right. 3. We might have a problem with the first pin as well, although it is a lower pressure spring, so maybe not. 3 is the wedding cake. Then our barrel serrated in 2. And our other pin and pin. Our spooled T-pin, pin and pin. And it's good. Alright, so now throw a shim in there, slide the cord in, get this puppy together, and make sure she operates. It's very common for challenge locks to not be smooth operators, so just keep that in mind. If you make a challenge lock, it might stick. It's kind of the nature of the beast. Alright, it does not want to go in. Let's try from the back. There we go. This is going to be a beast to shim for whoever's going to pick it, which is going to be me next. But it's the way she is sometimes. Let's get her together. Oh, actually, I forgot one step, and that is to just smooth out this core. So we'll put the key in with the key pins in. And then you can see I've already done it with this piece of sandpaper. And you just wrap it around. And don't worry guys, if you didn't get here at the beginning of this stream, I will post it on my channel and you can watch it from the beginning. But I'm warning you right now, we're at 1 hour and 15 minutes, so it's going to be a long video. Anyway, I just do this to smooth it all up, make it all nice and polished and uniform. As you can see, it's all nice and shiny now. Still got my initials in it. And slam it together. And it might catch at first, and it did a little bit, but after a couple times, because we smooth those T-pins out, this thing is almost like butter. You can feel the center, but no ticks or clicks or anything like that. And if I didn't smooth those T-pins out, that wouldn't be happening. So let's get the tailpiece on the back. And then, yeah, we'll operate this 1 or 2 more times, fill it full of lube. And then I'll stop the stream, clean all this crap up, try picking it. I always pick it before I send it out and before I name it. And we'll pick it, see how it acts. I'll lube it up, all that good stuff. And then it'll be another one for whoever is the poor soul who gets it. So nice and smooth operator, but I still like to lube them up. It's hard to find the center in this thing. There it is. Alright, let's get some tri-flowy goodness in there. I actually dropped this thing and the nozzle busted off, but there's still a stub, so I can use it. It's like half full still. Too cheap to buy another one. There we go. Work that lube around. Key goes upside down. Nice. You want to check all that stuff out before you send it out to anybody. Make sure it's all good. You always want to, in and out a bunch of times just to make sure the thing works properly. On this one, like most, I have to tighten down this tailpiece a little bit more. Otherwise, I have to push on the plug to pull the key out, which is standard on these schlags. They're used to having 2 screws in it, and I do have the other screw around here, but you got to tighten them right down. As you can see, it's already almost stripped, so I tend not to. And everybody who gets challenge locks knows you have to sometimes hold the plug to get the key to come out, so it's not a big deal. But I will try to fix it the best I can. And every time I go to put it in, it's getting better and better. So many ins and outs, and it gets a lot smoother. And that's just rounding off all the very sharp bits and stuff. Anyway, that is it, guys. It is time to put this thing in a vise and pick it. And I'm going to do that on regular recording because I can't focus in on anything with this live stream. But thanks everyone for watching, and I noticed that some people are just joining in right at the end. Don't worry, I will put this up on my channel. It'll be video number 304 or something like that. And then hopefully tonight, if not tonight, then tomorrow, I will have this thing picked and showing you all the pins that we just created here. And hopefully it'll be tonight. I mean, I don't work tomorrow. It's 11:16 right now, but I don't work tomorrow, so I got time, and I should get at it. I just got to clean all this crap up first. The beauty about that is this pin lathe, everything just kind of goes in there. So I have this little keyboard brush that I use for, usually use it for my key cutter to clean up the ground around the key cutter, or the shelf around the key cutter. But it's good for sweeping up little brass shavings off of this thing so they don't get everywhere. As you can see, there's a piece of newspaper underneath. That's just to save the cleanup. And just flip it open and dump all your stuff in there. So, sandpaper, the saw blades, the files, where's the drill bit? Around here somewhere. There it is. The drill bit I always keep in here, along with some other small bits so I don't have to fish for them. That's pretty much it. Anyway, guys, I will be back in hopefully less than an hour. Well, it depends on how long it takes to upload and all that stuff. But I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to pick that lock, and we'll see what I did. All right, guys. Thanks for watching, everyone. I see I've got a bunch of people on now. I haven't been looking at the camera because obviously been working. But right on, guys. If this is something you guys like, let me know. Put it in the comments, and I'll do this kind of stuff. I'm not going to show challenge locks all the time, but you know, I made the Frankenschlag. I could do something like that, a video on that. I could do a video on making picks. I can drag my camera out to the shed and make picks out there and stuff like that. So let me know if you like this kind of live show thing, guys, and I'll keep it up. Long videos, but hey, I do this stuff anyway, so you might as well watch, right? Later, guys.